It's like DJ Penn.
The way that it worked out, obviously they would have had to like reserve something afterwards, as opposed.
I think they could have pulled that off for 2 minutes, you know?
Right? Yeah, that's what I would think so.
And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is finally Friday, August 5th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks. 13-game MLB slate going on tonight. And I'm not going to lie, it's incredibly ugly, but we will be playing it one way or the other, and we will certainly be breaking down every single game. So before we get started, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow both of us on Twitter. Adam, how's it going? How was your Thursday?
So it was good for everybody that I'm sure really cares. I found my trophy for winning the MMA championship, so that's all I really care about. It was in a different box in my apartment that I hadn't opened yet. Thought something else was in there, so hadn't bothered to look. But yeah, lost at DFS last night. Didn't care. Got my trophy. I'm happy.
Was it packed in a way that it made sense that it was shipped separately from inside its own case?
Yeah, it was in a box with styrofoam, and then outside the styrofoam was like regular foam, and then that box was in like a wooden crate, like nailed together, like or screwed together. Like I had to go find my screwdriver just to even get into the trophy. So like I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do with that wooden crate now, but yeah, it was much more secure than like if it had just been sitting in the case.
I can only imagine that screwdrivers in your apartment usually are the orange juice and vodka variety.
Yeah. So I knew where one was, and it was flathead, and I needed Phillips, and I'm like, shit, I don't know where that one is. But I just realized like 2 weeks ago that my apartment had left like housewarming gifts that I had just not really noticed were there on my counter, and there was like a 6-piece screwdriver kit in there, so that came in handy.
Nice. Is the trophy breakable?
Yes.
Okay. I can't tell. I couldn't tell if that was just like molded one piece or like very clearly like pieces together. Because if it wasn't,
I mean,
if it was unbreakable, then it should just ship in the case.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I assume if I drop it, it will. Like, I'm sure it depends where too. If I drop it off my balcony, yeah, it's gonna break.
Well, no shit.
I mean,
I just meant like in shipping, like were there like was it obvious that like things could be harmed in shipping?
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to break in shipping, but
okay. I don't know. I don't know a lot about trophies. I haven't received one in a very long time. So
I was trying to think back. This has to be my first trophy since high school.
Katie gets a trophy for the winner of her fantasy football league every year, but it's of the like 9-year-old winning a soccer tournament variety. So they're like $20 and pieces of shit. But I haven't seen like a legitimate trophy in a very long time. Like even high school was medals, not trophies. So it's even different there.
Yeah, no, high school we got like trophies, but even high school, I mean, so like we won our region in baseball my freshman year, and then we didn't win it again. So I think that there's a legitimate chance the most recent like individual award type trophy that I got was like my freshman year of high school. Like my most recent team trophy was probably my freshman year of high school.
Yeah, I legitimately can't even think about it. It's either soccer, like I don't know, before I could drive a car, or like winning the hoop shoot when I was 12.
Right. Larry C asked if I found a spot for it. No, I have no idea where I'm going to put it. Obviously, it would be like the perfect thing to put on a shelf as part of my backdrop. But as you can see behind me, there's not really much room for a shelf. So maybe I'll move my desk and have a backdrop again. But otherwise, I don't really know where I'm going to put it.
There we go. So 13 games today. Pitching is just a real tire fire. So breaking that down is going to be interesting. Hitting is incredibly flat, in my opinion. That's going to be tough to break down. So I think we need to just dive in. I'm ready if you are.
Yeah, let's go.
Phillies and Nationals. 5.1 run implied total for the Phillies, 3.6 for the Nats. Kyle Gibson and Josiah Gray. Is that really Josiah Gray, or did I type that in wrong? This betting video that I do the night before is really starting to screw me up because I'm prepping basically 2 slates at the exact same time. And I can't, like, to me, Josiah Gray pitched yesterday because I did this at like 2 o'clock yesterday. Gray, yeah. It's real. I should have just known when I saw the ownership was next to his name, but it's really starting to trip me up by preparing these things twice, because I'm getting like 2 of the 5 starters in a 5-day span pretty quickly. Right. And it's just destroying my mind. Gibson, one of the few pitchers that are getting a chunk of ownership today. 20% owned against this lowly Nats team. I'll be honest, I did not get that amount of Kyle Gibson. I understand why it's happening. 7K price tag against a crappy Nats team makes a ton of sense, but I think that I can pretty easily find other guys that look the exact same. How do you feel about Gibson here?
I think he looks fine. I understand why he's getting the ownership. If you look at our pitcher projections, we have him at 14.5 points. I do agree with you that there are other guys that project very similarly and are getting less ownership. So that is a spot where it's probably going to be a little bit easier in general to pivot away from popular pitchers on tonight's slate than it normally is. We've had a lot of slates recently where it's just like, oh, these three guys are getting ownership and these three are just very clearly where I'm going to get to. I don't quite think that's the case tonight. It's reflected in the top pitchers tool as well. We have like 7 pitchers between 7 and 7.9% of being the top 2 scoring pitcher tonight on DraftKings. Kyle Gibson is one of those 7. He is pulling 20% ownership. The next highest is Dean Kramer at 9%. So there's just a bunch of dudes that you can move ownership to if you want to. But that being said, I do understand why Gibson's getting some ownership and why he does project relatively well against a weak Washington team. Yeah,
it just feels safe. Like I don't feel like he looks exceptional. It just every single bit of this makes sense. At a 7K price tag, Kyle Gibson is a functional Major League Baseball pitcher, and that's just going to always play at 7K when you're facing a team that is barely made up of major leaguers at this point. So I get it. Josiah Gray, 8,500 on the opposite side, getting a very, very small amount of ownership. Are you trying to go up against the Phillies here in this spot?
I don't hate it just because he does have good strikeout stuff and he's not getting much ownership, but the price tag's a little bit more expensive than a lot of other guys that you can get to that project similarly. He does have good strikeout stuff. He's struck out 27% of hitters this year, 4.2 xFIP, but he has also allowed 2.1 home runs per 9. So I think this is a really high upside spot on both sides, but from like a medium projection standpoint, I think it's going to be difficult to prioritize either one.
We talk bats now. This is actually a spot where we do have a bit of stuff to talk about. Phillies with a 5+ run implied total, 3rd in top stack, 4th in ownership. I had them 4th in my top stack tool. A lot of the ownership going to Schwarber, 20-something%. The rest of it is relatively flat. I think Philly looks good here, but it's not like I'm actively trying to get a ton against Josiah Gray, but I certainly think Philly looks good, and I understand why they're getting ownership.
Yeah, it's a good power spot. They're also a team that has plenty of power in their lineup, and they're reasonably priced. You have Alec Boehm hitting 3rd. He's been hitting really well over the last month and a half, 2 months, finally living up to his high prospect status. He's still cheap. Rhys Hoskins is cheap. If you don't want Hoskins, you can go even cheaper to haul. You still have a free Nick Castellanos. So the combination of it being a really high upside matchup in terms of how much power Gray gives up, and the value here, I understand why the Phillies are getting ownership. I think it makes sense. I do just think it's important to keep in mind that Gray really isn't a terrible pitcher. Like, he has a home run problem, but he's also completely capable of just going out there and mowing guys down.
Schwarber for cash games?
Certainly in the mix. I think there's a lot of guys from Philly in the mix. Schwarber, Hoskins, potentially Boehm if you're not paying up at 3rd base, potentially Castellanos. Obviously, he's been bad this year, but same conversation we had yesterday.
Nats are 22nd in our top stack tool out of the 26 teams on this list, but they are number 1 in top value. I also had them there as well. Based on what I see from pitching, getting to a value stack seems like a not existent thing. I have no interest in Washington.
Yeah, it's really tough to make that case on this slate because, for one, there's just so many teams that they have to beat in terms of actual fantasy points scored with being such a large slate. But 2, what are you doing with the value? Robbie Ray, the highest owned pitcher on the slate, is 8,900. Sure, you can get to Dylan Cease at 10.4. He's a really good option as well. But there's just such a strong's not the right word, deep mid-range of pitchers where they all just look decent. I don't think you're going to have any trouble getting to bats that you want without stacking the Nats.
I agree. Anything else here, Phillies and Nats?
Nope.
Sort of. Speaking about Phillies, Fanatic717 with the super chat said, took down the wiffle ball on FanDuel. Thanks, boys. Now let's get the 30K tourney today. Thanks for all you guys do. Congrats on taking down the wiffle ball. It's a tough tournament to win. Take that shot at the money tonight. I know the feeling on trying to run it up and double it up there on the bigger one, but
It has
go
never
for it, man.
worked for me.
Nope, not a single time for me either. Not a single time. But it feels good to get into it. That's for sure. I can very much relate. But congrats on taking down the wiffle ball, man. That's awesome. To your Orioles, we go. If I can spell Orioles correctly. 4.7 run implied total for the Orioles, 3.9 for the Pirates. Dean Kramer and Mitch Keller go into this one. Kramer, 10% owned. Keller, not owned. Essentially the same price here. I'd rather have Keller than Kramer, given the ownership. I think these guys are basically the same play today.
I mean, one's facing the Orioles and one is facing the Pirates is the issue, but
I don't have that as a huge gap.
that's because you're insane. You have hated on the Orioles all season long for unknown reasons, and you probably think the Pirates are good too.
No, I don't think either one of them. I don't think either one of the lineups that I have in today are particularly good.
I mean, it is fair. Like, obviously, Mancini being gone for the Orioles waters it down a bit, but to your point, I don't think there should be a 10-1 ownership gap between Dean Kramer and Mitch Keller. I do expect that I would get to Dean Kramer first. We have him projected for 14.2 DraftKings points. We have Keller at 12.5. So far this season, Kramer's got an 18.5% strikeout percentage. Keller's at 19.8%. Actually, a better xFIP for Keller, too, at 3.97 compared to 4.69 for Kramer. Against left-handed hitters this year, Kramer does have a 24.5% strikeout percentage compared to 13.4 against righties. You're probably going to get a predominantly left-handed lineup for Pittsburgh. So if you buy into those splits, that's favorable for him. But I do agree with you that these pitchers are closer than the ownership suggests.
Yeah, like it's not like I'm a big Mitch Keller stan here or anything. And I think that these guys are like, these are the afterthoughts of the slate. Neither one of these guys is a priority. Top pitcher odds are 7% and 4%. Like they're not exactly like anything that I care about. I was just surprised to see one guy get a 10% and one guy get none percent.
Yeah.
Either way, neither Kramer nor Mitch Keller are priorities. They're the type of guys that just like sneak into some of your lineups if you're playing 150.
Agreed. Yeah, they're guys that like they'd be a lot more useful if this slate were totally different. Like if this were just like a top heavy pitching slate and then also a slate where like the Yankees and Braves and I don't know who else is Dodgers were all in like unbelievably good spots and correctly priced. Yeah. They would be super useful. Here it's just kind of like, yeah, they're there.
Yeah, like they're two of 8 or 9 guys that I think look exactly the same in a similar salary tier. So your mileage may vary on different ones. So pick what you want. Orioles bats, certainly the team that's pulling more ownership, 8th in our top stack tool. They're 5th in aggregate ownership. I actually have them 6th in top stack. So I'm even higher on your Orioles in this spot. Mullins, Rutschman, Mountcastle, all 10% or higher. Odor actually 10% owned today, which is a thing. How do you feel about the Orioles on the opposite side of Keller?
I'm sure you didn't see it, but there were like somebody started like a false rumor that Odor got DFA'd yesterday. And
I did see it briefly, but like it's not something that I dug into.
Yeah, I was so excited because it would mean Kyle Stowers was coming up most likely, and then turned out it was just a lie. But
how does that happen?
What you say?
The old shitty hitter Rougned Odor getting DFA'd becomes like a thing,
right? Yeah, well,
as if like, anyone should ever give a shit.
Well, like if you like search, like I guess for lack of a better phrase, Orioles Twitter, it's just all like, when are we going to DFA Odor? And then someone like finally just started a fake rumor. But yeah, they look okay here. Keller has been better than I guess realized this year, because he's somebody that like I used to play a ton in the past, and he would strike out a lot of guys and also give up a lot of power. This year he's not striking guys out at the same rate, but he's also doing a better job limiting power. 120 expected ISO to lefties, 155 to righties. Negative park shift for him though, especially with regard to left-handed hitters. Obviously righties in Camden Yards have some issues now with the massive wall a mile away in left field, but I think Cedric Mullins looks good. I always like Rutschman. Santander looks pretty good. And then the rest of the lineup is pretty cheap. So I think it's a pretty nice combination of value and upside for the Orioles here.
I didn't get to a lot in my first crunch. We'll see if that ends up mattering as we get closer to lock. I certainly didn't get a lot of the Pirates. 14th in top stack, 9th in ownership. Brian Reynolds pulling a little bit of ownership, but I'm not expecting to get a lot of this game in general. I'm surprised I didn't get a little bit more Orioles, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the Pirates here too. The issue is just that it's such a big slate, and the Pirates are the Pirates. Reynolds at 4K, I think, is a pretty good value, though. O'Neal Cruz at 4,200 looks fine. There are some weather concerns in this game too. I know, obviously, we don't dig into that too much at 11 in the morning, but we had massive storms here, like all night last night. We're supposed to get, I think, more of the same tonight. So definitely keep an eye on that.
Anything else here? Orioles and Pirates? This is a tough game to talk about.
Yeah, it
I'm
is
surprised.
tough. It's two
nothing.
mediocre pitchers and then one below average and one slightly closer to average, offense against those pitchers. So like you could definitely see some runs scored here, but there's also just so many teams on the slate. It's hard to prioritize.
It's incredible how bad the takes of King of Smack are.
I didn't have it open.
He's mad that we're hating on Odor.
No, it's not why he's still around. He won't be there at the end of the season. He can't play defense. He's still around because they like him in the clubhouse and they didn't have a better option for a lot of the year. Now that they have Vavra up, Odor's days are limited because sooner or later they're going to call up Kyle Stowers. They have to put him on the 40-man to do it. And when they do, they're going to kick Odor to the curb.
I got a better one here. 76 WRC plus over the past 4 seasons.
Yeah, well, he mentioned his defense.
Sure. By the way, one
good
really good year defensively, which was 2021. Whether or not that was, I said one good year defensively per the stats at the very least, but not enough to like salvage all that much.
Yeah, no, he's just a placeholder for a team that was supposed to be bad.
Yeah,
isn't bad. They do like him. He's had some like clutch hits this year, which has been cool. But they love him in the clubhouse. I'm sure they're giving him as long a leash as they can, but he's not going to be on the Orioles at the end of the year.
The last time he was good, this site didn't exist.
And it is crazy how he dropped off like so far and so quickly. Because he wasn't like, it's not like he was old.
No, I mean, from the amount of power that he had, like in his position, like it played.
Oh, yeah.
Just stopped mattering at all. Anyway, this is also DFS show. I don't give a shit what he does defensively.
Yeah, no, he was just talking about the, why he's on the team. But
yeah,
really it was, we can get this dude to come play for us. We don't have to promote a prospect when he's not ready. We don't have to pay him anything. And then now it's like, okay, well, we're actually winning games. We have prospects that are ready to be called up. His days are limited.
Absolutely.
I was kind of like, from a fan standpoint, like obviously I want him gone. I want Stowers up. I mean, shit, I want Gunnar Henderson up. But it was still kind of just like disappointing when I thought he had gotten DFA'd, just from like the sentimental aspect of like, he's had some really clutch hits this year that were really fun. But yeah, the dude's not good.
Mets and Braves. 4.5 run implied total for the Mets, 4.1 for the Braves. Taijuan Walker and Ian Anderson going here. Neither guy getting any ownership. Walker, 9,100 against the Braves. Yikes. Ian Anderson, 6,800. Just doesn't really matter. I don't care about pitching here.
No, me neither. It's a pretty tough spot to want to get to, I think. The Braves do strike out, if you wanted to make some sort of a case for Taijuan Walker, but I still think it's really difficult because of the combination of some other pitchers in his price range that certainly look better and aren't facing the Braves, but then also just like the abundance of guys in that 7 to 8K range. They're not all going to pitch well, obviously, but some combination of that group is going to probably do the same thing Taijuan Walker can.
Yeah, I got nothing else to say there. Bats in this one, 23rd in ownership for the Mets, 13th for the Braves, but that is only Ronald Acuna, who is 12% owned. Next highest guy on the Braves is 2.5. They ended up being two teams that you would be happy to have had at least a little bit of yesterday, which we sort of talked about on the deeper dive. Is today a day where you also want to go back to the Mets and Braves bats?
This is a really difficult slate to talk about so far. This is another game where
it doesn't get better.
It's like 2 decent pitchers facing 2 good offenses. I like the lack of ownership coming into the Braves and the Mets. That makes me want to get there. I certainly can't say they're priorities given that there's 26 or whatever it is offenses on the slate. We have Atlanta with a 4% chance of being the top stack at 3% ownership. Mets at 2% with 1% ownership. Neither pitcher is horrible. Walker this year, 154 expected ISO to lefties, 150 to righties. Anderson sub 100 expected ISO to lefties, 151 to righties, but there's a lot of really good hitters on both teams. this is just another spot where it's just like they're not going to get ownership, and I don't think they should, in the sense that, like, if you told me the Braves were 10% owned, I would just be okay, well, I'll gladly go somewhere else. But they're still good offenses not getting ownership. I mean,
I don't know how
it's
to
really
talk
difficult.
about it.
I think this is gonna be a really fun slate to play.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult one to talk about in the sense of like articulating what you're doing, because there's not a lot of like, oh, this looks good for XYZ reason. It's like, oh, this looks mediocre, but nobody else wants it, so I'll take it.
Yeah, like I think that you and I are going to be able to have really legitimate conversations where I tell you 3 teams that I think I'm going to be like pretty significantly over the field on. You're going to have 3 different teams, and I don't think that either one of us are going to be like outwardly wrong.
Right, exactly. And yeah, Larry C just said, he said it's weird. Pitching is meh and offense is kind of flat across the board. Pitching is meh, not because there's not a lot of, it's not that there's like a ton of bad pitchers slash not a lot of quality pitchers. It's that like almost every good pitcher is facing a good offense, and every good offense is facing a good pitcher. So it's just like one of these slates where everything projection wise is just completely mediocre. But from a range of outcome standpoint, there's still like really high ceilings for everything.
Right. Like if the Braves are playing the Tigers today, $6,800 Ian Anderson plays so much differently than he does in this matchup against the Mets.
Right. This is a slate where I think people that rely on median projections without doing anything to account for range of outcomes are likely to really struggle, or not necessarily struggle. I mean, obviously they can just end up on the right guys, but like if slates were like this every day across the season, the people that don't understand range of outcomes and how to factor them in would take a bath.
I completely agree. I have nothing else to say in this game. Acuna, obviously a potential cash consideration here at 5,100. Otherwise, there's not a single other thing in this game that you're probably playing in a cash game.
Agreed.
That's 3, so I don't have to talk any longer about that. So let's go ahead and talk about the schedule for the rest of the day. This one's easy. Deeper dive coming up at 4:45. Adam and I will be back breaking down that bad boy. Hopefully something crazy happens and like this becomes a 6-gamer and a 7-gamer or something, and we can talk about it differently. Then we've got MLB Live Before Lock coming up at 6 p.m. Free tool for today. That would be the Night Owl once again. So if you're interested in the night slates, we have all of the data for the night slate in one spot. You get top stacks and top pitchers and all of the different positions all broken down in one individual table so you can understand what's going on for the night slate. And that tool is free. Let us know what you think about it in the comments. That would be fine too. Guardians and Astros, 3.6 run implied total for the Guardians, 5 for the Astros. We don't have anybody in for the Astros right now because I don't think he has a salary. I've got it as Hunter Gaddis going for Cleveland. I might have said going for the Astros, but going for Cleveland. Framber Valdez is going for the Astros, 9,900, basically unowned. Decent spot, but really difficult strikeout matchup. I guess we don't really need to talk about Gaddis unless we're talking about it in terms of Houston's bats, if it's him. But do you have any interest in Framber Valdez?
Not really. He's a good pitcher. God, this is just going to be repeated so much throughout the show. He's a good pitcher. His matchup sucks. His price isn't great. It's just really difficult. Like, I understand the ownership is low, but 22% strikeout percentage, $9,900 price tag, that by itself is problematic. And then you put him up against the Cleveland team that just doesn't strike out, and it just doesn't set up all that well. He has a 22.5% strikeout percentage against lefties this year. So it's not like you get any sort of bump there. Sub 100 expected ISO to both sides of the plate. Ridiculously good at limiting production and damage, but that only goes so far in DFS.
If Gaddis had a salary, I think it'd be interesting to talk about him because he's striking out 32% of batters across AA and AAA this year, but he doesn't. So I got nothing else to say.
Me neither.
Astros are 6th in our top stack odds. 2nd for me, by the way. 7th in ownership right now. This is one of the first big stands that I am taking. Ownership only in double digits for Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker. That should not be all that surprising, but Altuve 7, Gurriel 3, Bregman 3. I have a ton of Houston. One of my favorite stacks for today. Finally, we're getting to something that actually stands out to me. I would like to get to the Astros.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I doubt that you noticed it, but I went on the tangent yesterday morning about how I really like Houston's lineup now because you don't have to play McCormick and Maldonado and those guys. And then I went on it again on the deeper dive when they were in the lineup instead of Vasquez and
They
Mancini.
homered.
They both homered.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. So anyway, I assume we're going to get back to a normal Astros lineup tonight. Hopefully Kyle Tucker's in there. He was scratched yesterday. He certainly makes that lineup look a hell of a lot better, especially at only $4,500. But if we do get the lineup that we're expecting, everything I said yesterday will apply, where 1 through 8, it's just good hitters, and you do get some value in there. You know, Alvarez, Bregman, Altuve are expensive, but Gurriel's cheap. Pena's reasonably priced. Tucker is cheaper than he should be. Mancini is just cheap in general at 3,100. Vasquez is a fine catcher option. So it's just a really, really high upside offense to get to. And we don't know what to expect from Gaddis. He's made 2 career starts above AA, 10 total innings at AAA this year. He's been very good in the minors, 32.7% strikeout percentage in 14 starts, 15 appearances at AA, and then a 29% strikeout percentage in his 2 starts at AAA, 3.61 xFIP at AA. But the Astros are clearly slightly better than your typical AA team. So the assumption would be that he's probably going to struggle with this matchup.
God, give me all the Astros tonight. I hope this ownership maintains the first one of the few spots where I see myself getting like significantly above the field. I don't see myself getting anywhere near bats in Cleveland outside of really Jose Ramirez. They are 24th.
That probably.
I got 2.7%. So there's that. 24th in top stack, 25th in ownership. This is one of the worst spots that you can get to. I don't even know what to talk about here.
Yeah, like I don't even consider this one like Valdez is a pretty good pitcher, but Cleveland still, could certainly get to him. Like it would be legitimately surprising if they put up a big game against Valdez.
Yeah. All righty. I don't have anything else in this one other than just play Houston.
Yep. King of Smack actually has a good point there, even though he articulated it kind of in a way that got you to roll your eyes.
Yes.
When it's something that we harp on a lot in chat because people always do yesterday they sucked or the day before they sucked. Like the teams at the top of the top stack tool say they have a 10, 15, 20% chance of being the top scoring stack. They're still not going to be the top scoring stack 80 to 90% of the time. So if you play that day out, 10 times, you're expecting them to be the top stack like once. Yeah. And so you always get to people being like, they sucked yesterday, I'm not going back to them today. Like the reason that it seems like the next day they do well is because typically they're really good offenses and they're going to be the most likely like every day. And so like the main takeaway here is like just ignore what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're 8% to be the top stack, that's once every 12 and a half days. Like you're going to look real dumb for like 7 of them. 3 of them, it's just going to be like, and then they're going to be like first and second.
Right.
You just want to be there on the day that you're right with the proper leverage in your lineup. Tigers and Rays, 3.5 run implied total for the Tigers. 5 run implied total for the Rays. Brian Garcia and Corey Kluber going in this one. No ownership to Garcia, not going deep in this one. Kluber's 8,200, 5% owned. We're at one of the first pitchers that I really think should be getting a little bit more ownership. I got a lot more of Kluber. He is currently in 16% of my lineups, and I think that makes some sense here. I don't know why I wouldn't want to get to Corey Kluber at 8,200 against the Tigers.
Yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me either, especially given the ownership. I understand that he's $1,200 more expensive than Kyle Gibson, but I don't think he should be getting 4 times the ownership going to Gibson. Right now, we have Kluber projected basically a point ahead of him. So again, Gibson looks like the better value, but they're pretty similar in terms of range of outcomes. Kluber's got the higher strikeout percentage at 21.6%. 3.84 xFIP is better. Matchup against the Tigers is solid. Park downgrade for him, but that's kind of the only negative here. 3.3 implied run total for Detroit. I'm not making an argument like Kluber's a great pitcher anymore, but he's still solid. He's still good enough, and the price tag's reasonable. I don't think the other thing is like I don't think that the fact that he's 1,200 more than Gibson is going to be a huge deterrent because there are so many mid-range guys you can pair him with, or you can just pair him with Ray, and you're still paying $17,000 a pitcher, which means you can do pretty much whatever you want with your bats. So I don't think it's just going to be that big of a deal. I think he should be getting more ownership.
Yep. We're in the same page here. It's just a very easy differentiation point. Whether or not you like Eric Lauer today, 27% ownership for Lauer, 5 for Kluber. These guys are next to each other in salary. That's just one of those other spots where I don't think it's a 5-to-1 relationship. But
yeah,
so sign me up for some Kluber.
Somebody said Kluber doesn't go too far into the game. Yeah, I mean, he's thrown between 80 and 90 pitches in 5 straight starts. So that's not ideal, but he's also gone 6 innings in 4 of those 5.
I feel like the Tigers are the cure for what ails you too. If you need, like, if you're flowing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Rays bats. 5th in top stack. I'm actually, well, from a rank perspective, a little bit higher, 0.2 of a percentage point below. 2nd in ownership at 9.7%, but that is primarily Brandon Lau, 4,600, 24% ownership. I would imagine he is the cash second baseman for today. I'm happy to get to the Rays. It might not look the same as like their aggregate, but I think everybody outside of Brandon Lau's ownership seems about right to me. Not that Lau's seems wrong, but like I could see myself just being flat at that number.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tampa in general here because, like you're saying, Lau's the only one really pulling ownership. The rest of this team is relatively low owned. That's kind of the same thing we saw yesterday, where pretty much everybody on Tampa was like 5 to 10% owned, except for Lau was up around 20%, and he should be. He's clearly a top second base option, if not the top second base option. The matchup is solid. The park is better for hitting than Tropicana Field, so I do like Tampa here, Lau in particular. But I think it is important just to note, if you're somebody that relies on the top stacks tool in terms of just like if you manually build lineups and you look at the top stacks tool and decide what teams are over-owned, under-owned, Tampa Bay is misleading here because of Brandon Lau.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get away from them here. That's for sure. And yeah, let's see. Are there any other second basemen that look better than him? To select none. I assume it's him. I don't know what it would have to be someone else. Altuve, I guess, if you just simply have the money to do it. Colton Wong's 4,200, so that doesn't seem like the spot if you can get Lau at 4,600. So
I would assume it's Lau. I mean, he's been the cash second baseman for a while, and now his price is dropping for reasons. So, yeah,
that seems right to me. Tigers are 25th in top stack, 22nd in ownership. I don't have them, and I don't want them.
Yeah, pretty tough sell on a slate of this size. We know Riley Green is a great hitting prospect. Victor Reyes is cheap, but I have a hard time getting to the Tigers here.
262 concurrent viewers, 55 likes. Feels a tad low for this point of the show. Feels a tad low for this part of the show. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up. See if we can run that number up to 100. I think that would be a pretty good idea right about now. You didn't like that one?
I did not.
That's my second name joke that I've made today.
That was terrible, Josh.
Yeah, I saw the Jason Day one on Twitter.
That was awful.
I didn't even know Day had withdrawn until I saw your tweet.
And then Adam Long 2 minutes after it.
I
wonder if they were. Oh yeah, both for illness. So I don't know what they were doing together last night, but they both woke up with chlamydia. Rangers and White Sox, allegedly.
5 today, fantastic.
Who is?
Kim.
Oh yeah, it's. I think it's all from putting again. So I'm ready to
based on Downside of Me's Twitter. That's the impression I've gotten.
It's infuriating. I have none in like the main slate. I have basically 0 in round 2 showdown. This guy is incredibly tilting.
Oh, and Munoz is going to go from at one point -5 yesterday to missing the cut today. That's great for me.
I'm trying to not look at anything. Like Im hasn't even teed off yet. So like I'm getting my ass handed to me. I've got a ton of him. I need Billy Horschel to make the cut or I might burn my house down.
Yeah, I mean, I was just paying attention to Munoz particularly because he's like my, second highest owned golfer. And when he was -5 yesterday, that was looking pretty good. Now that he's even through 16 holes today, even overall, +3 through 16, that's not as good.
I can't even bring myself to look right now. I'm just tumbling.
I'm gonna get smoked. At least I played like half the volume this week I normally do.
There you go. Rangers and White Sox. This is going to be a talking point. 3.4 run implied total for the Rangers, 4.5 for the White Sox. Glenn Otto and Dylan Cease. Otto unowned at 5,800. Dylan Cease slightly different, 10,400, most expensive pitcher on the slate, pulling 33% ownership. And to me, pretty much warranted. He's clearly the best full pay up option that you can get to today. Projects well higher than all of the other guys that are close to him in salary. We're going to leave Robbie Ray out of this discussion for right now. I'm happy to get to Dylan Cease.
Yeah, most talented pitcher on the slate. I don't think there's really an argument that he isn't. 3.02 xFIP is far and away the best. 33.3% strikeout percentage is about 6 points higher than Ray, who's second best. He walks too many guys. That's about it. That's as negative as you can get on Cease. The matchup against Texas is fine. It's not great, but it's not bad. 3.2 implied run total for the Rangers. The only thing on Cease is just like there's going to be a lot of lineups where you prioritize bats and you have enough cheap pitching that you don't need to get to Cease, but pretty clearly in a tier of his own in terms of payoff options.
Yeah. I don't. And clearly you're not going to have any trouble finding money to get to Dylan Cease either. There's just 15 stacks that can be cheap enough if you need it. There's 100 different pitchers if you need to just go low.
Yeah, and even pairing him with Ray, you're spending $19K.
Yeah. So I get it, and I don't have anything to add to it, and I don't want to go to Glenn Otto. Next question I've got for you is about the White Sox bats, who we have first in our top stack tool, or at least we did before the show started. I don't know what your look is going to be for. Yeah, they are 14th in ownership.
No. I was looking at the pitcher list on DraftKings, and I didn't realize. So I had like the all button selected instead of pitcher, and so it had Max Scherzer listed, and I was just like, I'm pretty sure we just talked about the Mets game, and I didn't talk about Scherzer. But if Scherzer was pitching, I probably shouldn't say Cease is in a league of his own. And then I realized I had the wrong thing selected.
White Sox are number 1 in our top stack tool, 14th in ownership. I have them 6th in top stack. I'm off. I'm different by 3%, but the opposite direction of how I got the White Sox yesterday. What do you see here for Chicago against Otto?
I think it's a good spot. Also on a tangent. So now I'm back on the correct pitchers page on DraftKings. They have both Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie pitching for Cleveland tonight. So
that's going to be an interesting.
And Zach Plesac and Aaron Savali. Everybody on Cleveland is pitching tonight, according to DraftKings.
That's interesting. They'll be able to stay fresh. I probably wouldn't want to take any of them because they're only going to go an inning or two. I didn't know they were treating it like an all-star game.
Yeah, I was say Cleveland's running their own all-star game tonight, I guess. But no,
I don't like McKenzie today then.
Yeah, no McKenzie. The White Sox, I think, look good. They lead the top stack tool, like you said, not by a wide margin, 7.6%. Milwaukee second, Phillies third, all above 7% as well. Only 2% projected ownership. I think it's another situation where they're relatively expensive on DraftKings, so maybe you just don't get quite as much ownership going there as some of these other teams. Anderson and Robert, the only two guys above 5K, but then Vaughn, Moncada, Abreu, all upper 4K range. Jimenez, 4,300. So I think that does probably drive the ownership down a little bit, but I do also think that once again, same as yesterday, we have nearly an 8% top stack percentage on the White Sox, 2% projected ownership. I do think the ownership comes in higher than that, but I think they still end up being, either correctly or slightly underowned. It is a solid matchup against Otto. Getting Luis Robert back in the lineup is good for the White Sox. Otto's allowed a 223 expected ISO to lefties this year, 186 to righties, doesn't strike out a lot of guys. I like the White Sox here.
Yeah. I understand why they're ranked high. I feel like something is off with our top stack tool. I mean, we're talking about a team that is significantly behind the Brewers, Rays, Astros, and Phillies in implied total, and they're still getting all the way to the top on a slate where the Dodgers still exist, the Blue Jays still exist, the Yankees still exist. I don't think they're first. I think my 4.5% and being 6 makes a lot more sense just in the grand scheme of this slate. So I'm curious to see where they end up. I still think they're under-owned at 2.5%. To me, they're still a really good play if they're the 14th most owned team. But I don't really even see how they could be first.
Well, yeah, and I guess I had said it to you yesterday when I saw my stuff around lock, but I could see this also being a case where maybe their ownership doesn't come up too much, but their top stack percentage comes down. Yeah. And for me, when I do my stuff, I'm able to factor in salaries as well.
Yeah.
And so that, for me yesterday, it pulled the White Sox down a little bit just because they were more expensive than teams like Philadelphia. So I think it's the same thing. It's likely to be the same thing today. Either their ownership comes up or their top stack percentage comes down a little bit. But one way or the other, it's a good spot against Otto, and I want to get to the White Sox.
Completely agree. I don't want to get to the Rangers on the opposite side of Cease.
Yeah, me neither.
All right. Got to talk a little bit about Prize Picks, presenting sponsor of this show. If you go to Prize Picks and sign up using the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, you can get a $100 match deposit bonus. And we're not talking about like needing to beat sharks or optimizers or anything like that anymore. You can make a 5-player lineup that will net up to 10x your entry fee. We're talking about player props in this case, but it's not even just that. That's going to be across all sorts of sports. Lacrosse is on here. NASCAR, college football futures are on here. I can't imagine taking like a passing yards future on Bryce Young, but you're going to be sitting on that one for a couple months. MMA, Rocket League, tennis, soccer. I mean, anything that you could possibly want that has any sort of sporting event, you can do that at Prize Picks. We're going to talk a little bit about the MLB side here. I'm going to hit Adam with a couple pitcher fantasy scores. I think that's the easiest way to look at some of these things. Let's start it off with Kyle Gibson, over under 31.5 fantasy points.
Under.
I agree. Got him at 26. Clean under. We'll go back to Dylan Cease, 42.5.
Under.
I agree. To me, feels high. Let's do one more. Let's see if we can get a weird one. We'll go to the Braves. Ian Anderson, 23.5.
Over.
That would be a push for me. Just interesting lines. The more that we do this, the more that I feel like I should be playing Prize Picks and taking these things, because I feel like I differ pretty aggressively than some of these lines, and I should lock them in.
I mean, Lindquist wins at it. How hard can it be?
I love that he'll never hear this.
I know.
And even if he does, it's better. That's a good point.
I mean, obviously I'd prefer him to be in chat.
Yeah, of course. It's not as fun to take shots when actually, he just responded to a tweet of mine.
That's what made me think. That's what made me think
4 minutes ago.
I knew there was a non-zero chance he was in chat because I'd just seen him reply to something on Twitter.
Yeah. He replied to my golf tweet 4 minutes ago. So he might sneak into this one. It wouldn't be surprising, which makes me even happier that you took the shot if he was here just in like lurk mode.
Yeah, he hasn't replied yet though, so he's not here.
Well, he's on West Coast time, so it takes a little bit longer.
Is that how it
Just
works?
making that up, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Brewers and Reds, 5.3 run implied total for the Brewers, 3.6 for the Reds. Eric Lauer going for Milwaukee. Robert Duggar going for Cincinnati. Eric Lauer is 27% owned right now against Cincinnati. This Cincinnati lineup is so bad that it makes all of the other bad lineups look almost good today. 91 aggregate WRC plus is where I land. Only Joey Votto and Jonathan India over 100. I certainly understand why Lauer is getting 27% ownership. On a day like today, I just don't know if I want that much, but I'm clearly getting to him.
Yeah, it's a good spot for him. He's a good pitcher, 24% strikeout percentage, 4.09 xFIP. Does give up some power, but like you said, it's also just a weak lineup for Cincinnati. India is fine, but he's also expensive at 4,900. It's $8K for Lauer is a very fair price tag. I think he's a good play. I also do think that it's another spot where you can certainly justify moving some ownership around if you need to. For example, Lauer probably shouldn't be 5 times as popular as Corey Kluber, but I do think that, the two pitchers we've talked about so far that are pulling ownership that we don't totally think it's wholly deserved. I still think it's easier to find pivots from Kyle Gibson than it is from Lauer.
I completely agree with you there.
Like we have Lauer with a 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. We have Gibson at 8%. There's a lot more guys just lumped in around Gibson than there are Lauer.
My top pitcher odds are spot on to what we have. 13 top pitcher, 10 top value. This one makes a ton of sense to me. I mean, I have Lauer as the 3rd highest projected pitcher on the slate, and he's 8K. Like he's very, very good. Just it's all relative today.
Did not realize Lauer is higher priced than Ray on FanDuel. That is in fact stupid.
Yes. I don't have to ask you anything about Robert Duggar on the opposite side here. But we definitely need to talk about the Brewers. 2nd in top stack. They were my number 1. They are number 1 in ownership. And outside of Yelich being 17% owned, like 10 to 11% isn't even all that crazy for some of these guys. The price isn't all that bad. And Duggar is dog shit like legitimately dog shit. I'm absolutely going to the Brewers today.
Is he actually that bad? I didn't remember him being that
5.62 projected FIP via Steamer. So I imagine the underlying stats have to be pretty bad to get to that.
Yeah, it's bad. Not a huge sample. He's thrown 884 pitches in the majors since 2020. 184 expected ISO, 348 expected WOBA to righties, 21.6% strikeout percentage, 246 expected ISO, 399 expected WOBA to lefties, 12.5% strikeout percentage. Bad against everybody, exceptionally bad against lefties. Sets up well for Yelich, Tellez, Wong, and then obviously you're not shying away from guys like Renfroe and Adames and McCutchen.
Yeah, 482 FIP this season in AAA between the Rays and Cincy. 18% K rate, 10% walk rate. None of that is any good. It's rare. Like, he's 27 years old now, so like prospect ranks or whatever. He had a 30 grade fastball.
That's not great.
No, that was also that like 30 with a ceiling of 30.
Yeah.
With average slider, curveball, changeup. It's sort of like the profile of a lefty, but he's a righty.
Right. Yeah. He's only averaging 90.1 miles per hour in the majors this year, 90.7 for his career. I remember him from Miami. I just thought I remembered him being like never good. I just thought I remembered him being like serviceable, but he must have just had like a good start that screwed me over at one point or something.
Yeah.
Because he made 7 starts for Miami in 2019, which is clearly the year I'm thinking of. He had a 6.17 xFIP and struck out like nobody. So 16% of hitters, walked 11%. Yeah, dude's absolutely awful. I'd probably just have like one start ingrained in my head where he was good.
Career 5.14 Scherer over 82 and 2/3. Give me all of the Brewers today. And do not give me the Reds because they suck and there's no benefit on the opposite side. So nothing here for me. Remember when Aristis Aquino like went crazy for those first couple of weeks when he came up and was just like mashing dongs?
Yeah, I do remember
86 WRC plus via Steamer now.
Yeah. I mean, the best case I can make for the Reds is that Aquino is 2K flat. Senzel's 2,400. He runs fast. But like India's expensive. I have a really difficult time getting there.
Yeah. Royals and Red Sox. 4.3 run implied total for the Royals, 4.5 for the Red Sox. Zach Greinke and Josh Winkowski. Neither one of these guys getting any ownership. Greinke 5,600, Winkowski 5,900. I don't think either one of these guys look good. I really, really hope that I have basically zero of these guys.
Yeah, same boat. Like Greinke 5,600, technically underpriced, but just who the hell cares on this slate?
No, dude, these two couldn't be more meaningless. Red Sox are mildly meaningful, but odd. They are 4th in our top stack odds, 6th in ownership. Most of that ownership is going to Rafael Devers, who's pulling 18%, which is like almost 30% of everything that the Red Sox are getting. I'm not as enamored in the Red Sox stack as our top stack tool appears to be, but I wouldn't mind getting on the opposite side of Greinke. They look good, not great to me.
I think the top stack tool is a little bit misleading with regard to ownership as well. Devers at 18%, Arroyo at 13%. Next highest is Xander at 7%. Like, I have no issues whatsoever with a 7% owned Bogarts or a 3% owned JD or a 4% owned Verdugo at 3K. So I mean, I do think it's a good spot against Greinke. He's not the worst pitcher on the slate. It's not a great park to hit in. Both of those things aren't ideal. Only a 138 expected ISO to lefties, 208 to righties, but only striking out 10% of lefties as well. So I still think Devers looks fantastic as always. And again, JD at 4,200 looks fine. I like Bogarts. So I think I'm probably more in line with the field where I think it's a good spot. I do think that the factor in Kansas City hurts a bit.
Yeah. And then
looks like
on
it's supposed to be like 90 degrees there too, for whatever it's worth.
Royal side is the side getting the ownership. 22nd in our top stack tool, 6th in value, 3rd in aggregate ownership, and that's 10% to Melendez, Witt, Perez, Pasquantino, Dozier. Am I missing something here?
I mean, I'm sure I'll be there. I always am.
Do we just use your exposures as our ownership caps?
Right. Yeah, we're probably 40% low across the board. It's just the same thing I say every day. This team should be better offensively than they are. At least some of the players. Like Salvador Perez is always a top catcher option. So is MJ Melendez. He has outfield eligibility as well. Vinny Pasquantino is still 2,200. He is a top value at first base every single time he is that salary. Bobby Witt Jr. is one of the top shortstops. Anytime he's on a slate, he's only 4,800. Nick Pratto is a top 100 ranked prospect that is 2K flat with multi-position eligibility. Hunter Dozier isn't very good, but he has multi-position eligibility and he's 2,900, and he has a little bit of power and a little bit of speed. It's a cheap team that has 5.5 guys, calling Dozier a half, that are or soon should be good major league hitters at relatively cheap price tags in an average matchup against Winkowski. So they project relatively well for their salaries. They have a 4.5 implied run total here. They're probably also going to suck and fail because that's what they do every single slate, and I don't know why.
I mean, I don't have interest in them if they're pulling this ownership because I don't think that they rank all that highly. They were 16th in my top stack tool. I don't need the value. I understand that they are easy to get to, but I think it's just going to be a spot that I end up slightly different on.
They get pushed up by the way that I do my stuff, because instead of just basically saying, you know, like how often I think a team's going to score the most runs, I do it in terms of like, you know, optimal lineup percentage. And they get pushed up because Perez and or Melendez is going to be the optimal catcher a high percentage of the time. Witt's going to be the top shortstop a high percentage of the time. $2,200 Pasquantino is going to fit into a ton of optimal lineups. So is 2K Nick Pratto. And so they just end up getting pushed up, and I end up playing them. I actually felt good. Cheese is Good was tweeting yesterday about how something about writing up Kansas City and then going back to the well for the 100th time. And I was like, all right, well, at least I'm not the only one that just keeps jamming this team in. But yeah, I mean, the ownership is probably where it should be on this team. It's not like they're low owned, but I'm going to probably just get to them again because they just fill so many. They're such a good combination of value, upside, and filling in weak positions.
There we go. Adam's playing the Royals for the 100th straight day. Twins and Blue Jays. This is the team that I'll be playing for sure. 4.2 run implied total for the Twins, 4.6 for the Blue Jays. Tyler Mahle going for Minnesota. Jose Barrios going for Toronto. Mahle 3% owned at 8,700. Barrios 7% owned at 7,700. I am more likely to get to Barrios here. Not that I really want to, but I got about 12%. I did not get to Mahle. And Barrios is just another one of those guys where I'm happy to take a little bit of that Eric Lauer ownership, give some of it to Kluber, give some of it to Barrios. Actually, I'll happily take a little bit of Patrick Sandoval's ownership and give it to Barrios too. Not that I love him, but he looks perfectly reasonable at 7,700.
Yeah, I think both pitchers are kind of similar in that it's a difficult matchup. It's a really scary matchup for both guys. Barrios is less expensive, so that's probably the one that I would get to first. Only a 21.5% strikeout percentage this year. 3.9 xFIP is fine. Do expect that strikeout percentage still to go up as time goes on. Like, he just has never been this bad of a strikeout pitcher. Tyler Mahle's got the higher strikeout percentage at 25.9%, also facing the Blue Jays. So tough to want to get to him either. They're both just sort of guys that I think you can use as contrarian options based on their upside, but that neither one is really likely to do well. I did have a question for you before the show that I think Sean V is much more in a position to answer. Jose Barrios was always much, much better at home. He's been better at home for Toronto. He was always better at home for Minnesota. He's now facing Minnesota as the visitor in Minnesota. What splits are we supposed to use when making our decision on Barrios?
Yeah, obviously, I don't have an answer for that because that is not interesting to me. But I know one dum-dum that's about to give that a real. It might break him. It's going to be like when you see like robots get their. Like, you know, they get caught in a loop in a TV show and it's just like, right. And then they just glitch out and start smoking and stuff. He's not going to know what to do. He's going to have two competing narratives just jam themselves together.
Oh, and that's before we get to the actual revenge game narrative too.
Oh, good God. I hope it's not his birthday. Yeah. Let's talk Blue Jays bats. Unless you want to talk about Mahle, which I don't think you do.
I already talked about him. He's just a more expensive and slightly better version of Barrios.
Okay. Blue Jays are 9th in our top stack tool. 12th in ownership. Kirk is 7% owned. Next highest guy is 4. I've got all these guys around like 8. This is going to be one of the teams that I'm significantly over the field on.
Yeah, I mean, I respect both pitchers, but both guys will give up some power as well. We've certainly seen our share of Barrios blow-up starts this year, and he's allowed 1.7 home runs per 9. Malley's at 1.04, but there's a ton of power in the Toronto lineup. 145 expected ISO to righties for Malley this year, 110 to lefties. He has done a better job limiting power than he did in the past. As far as Barrios goes, 235 expected ISO to lefties, 187 to righties. Lower strikeout percentage against lefties as well. I think I prefer the Twins side here, but both of them are high upside offenses in mediocre matchups.
I'm looking at that 163 expected ISO against righties for Molly over the past 2 seasons, and 9 right-handed hitters with an aggregate slugging percentage or ISO of 200. And I just feel like this could be a launching pad for Toronto if this breaks correctly.
Yeah, he looks like he's changed up his pitch mix a little bit this year and been better against righties. Surprisingly, that's been throwing his slider less. He threw his slider 38% last year to righties. He's throwing it 26% this year. He's upped his splitter usage from 9% to 17%, and has a 145 expected ISO against them this year compared to 173 last year. So I agree with you. Like, the Blue Jays certainly can still light him up, but he has seemingly made some changes and had better results against righties this year.
I'm fully expecting the Blue Jays to do the thing that I feel like they always do, where I get a lot of them and all they do is hit solo homers.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to be mad about it, but like, I'm going to need some people to get on here. Are you going to get to Minnesota?
Yeah, I actually think I like Minnesota a little bit more than Toronto, just because I think Barrios is more home run prone than Malley and not as good a pitcher as Malley. And there's plenty of power on the Minnesota side as well. Right now, they are pulling 4% ownership, 2% chance of being the top stack. But I'm assuming that ownership is basically Polanco and Buxton, just Polanco. 10.5% going to Polanco. Nick Gordon, 2,200, is second at 7%. Everyone else is 4.4 or below. So not much ownership coming in here. And it's just a high upside lineup. There's only one guy in it above 5K in Buxton. The next highest priced guy is Correa at 4,600. Looks like it's supposed to be around 90 degrees in Minnesota too. So I think both of these teams make sense in tournaments. I think I get to Minnesota actually more than I get to Toronto.
All righty. Guys, promo code time. Are you ready? MLB Strategy Show. One big word, all caps. MLB Strategy Show. It will get you 1 week of Stokastic plus Platinum for 25% off. Oh, wait, I have it as 25%. Tyler's putting up a graphic that says 50, and now I have no idea what the actual number is.
How do you not know that?
I mean, it's 25% in my run sheet right now.
I clearly don't have an answer.
Let's dig in. Let's see. DMP says 50. Another spot in the DMP says 25. We're going with 50. We're going with 50. Lock it down. Put the graphic back up. MLB Strategy Show. One giant word. 50% off your first week of Stokastic plus Platinum. I will point that out at a later date, but we're going with 50 right now. Gives you access to everything. It's just not an MLB code. So NFL kicked off yesterday with some preseason football. That's behind the paywall. MLB, PGA, any type of racing that we've got going on. MMA, soccer, back today. Big slate tomorrow. 20K up top on DraftKings. Trying to talk Adam into it. All sorts of stuff behind the paywall. Projections, ownership, top stacks, top pitchers, top golfers, top fighters. All that good stuff. You can get it using that promo code MLB Strategy Show. Again, one big word. That was a fun one. Cardinals and the Yankees. 3.8 run implied total for the Cards, 4.6 for the Yankees. Dakota Hudson and Nestor Cortez. I have it as Nestor Cortez. Do we not have Nestor Cortez in the top pitcher stool?
We do. He's just pretty far down.
Nestor Cortez Jr. That's why it didn't pull through to this random table of mine. Anyway, Cortez unowned at 10,100. Dakota Hudson unowned at 6,100. Do you want any Cortez?
Not particularly. Difficult matchup against the Cardinals. He has the 4th highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 26%. 3.71 xFIP is good. I just don't feel the need to pay full price for Cortez against the Cardinals when I can either go to Dylan Cease, who has better strikeout stuff, or just save money and go to Robbie Ray and others.
Okay. Any Dakota Hudson?
No.
Makes sense. Let's talk bats. And I guess we're going to talk about the Yankees first. But so this is an interesting one. We've got the Cardinals 7th in our top stack tool. No ownership whatsoever, 25th. We've got the Yankees 17th. Basically no ownership outside of Aaron Judge. Is there a side of this game you want more? Because to me, it's clearly the Cardinals.
The Cardinals have to come down. They have a 3.8 implied run total, and they're facing Nestor Cortez.
Yeah, I don't... Right. Like when I said it's clearly the Cardinals, I meant that from what we're looking at here. I've got the Yankees 5th in top stack. I would much rather get to the Yankees.
Chance that, I mean, that's going to change.
Yep.
I certainly prefer the Yankee side. Hudson does an okay job of limiting power, keeping the ball on the ground. 161 expected ISO to righties this year, 141 to lefties, but a 13.5% strikeout percentage to righties, 12% to lefties. I'm going to gladly take my chances on this Yankees lineup, putting the ball in play and being able to do damage against Hudson. On the other side for the Cardinals, obviously Goldschmidt and Arenado are really good, and you get some power from guys like Carlson and O'Neill, but Cortez has just been a good pitcher this year. It's not a spot that I'm particularly inclined to get to. You can throw them into the mix with guys like, or teams like Toronto and Minnesota, but I still think I would just rather target, Barrios and Malley than Cortez.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any real interest in the Cardinals. I barely got to any of these guys because it's a terrible spot. So Diamondbacks and Rockies, 4.4 run implied total for the D-backs, 4.1 for the Rockies, Madison Bumgarner and Erman Marquez. Bumgarner getting 7% ownership at 6,200, but I don't see either one of these guys as like major priorities.
I was answering something about MMA in chat. You said the Colorado-Arizona game?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm with you. Neither guy looks great. Marquez is certainly somebody you can pivot away from Gibson with. We have Marquez right now with a 7.5% chance of being the top 2 pitcher. Gibson at 7.8%. Gibson pulling 10 times the ownership. We actually have... we have Marquez at 14.4 DraftKings points. We have Gibson at 14.5. There's no real reason that Gibson's getting this much more ownership than Marquez. Bumgarner, similarly, 14.2 point projection, not projected for much ownership, 7% ownership, 7% chance of being top 2. So I think both of these guys are pitchers that you can use to get off some of that Kyle Gibson ownership.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Diamondbacks, 15th in our top stack tool. Rockies, 12th. They're basically the same at like 3.5%. That's exactly where I have them. I don't like this entire game could just fall off the slate and it wouldn't make a difference to me.
Yeah, it's mostly the pitching here that I want. I do think CJ Cron at 4,500 looks good. Rogers and Grichuk look pretty good as well. On the other side, I don't really want to take Arizona against Marquez.
Yeah, I somehow got to every hitter in this game. No one less than 1.3%. So 2 lineups. No one more than 4.7. It's just like everybody's in like 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's like there's some value. I mean, I never mind taking right-handed hitters against Bumgarner, and there is some right-handed power here. On the other side, like Alec Thomas is still cheap. Ketel Marte is good. Varsho is relatively inexpensive. Marquez has allowed a 193 expected ISO to righties and 161 to lefties this year, but I think there's just better spots in general to get to. I would expect that I'm getting to the pitching more than the offenses here, which is wild to say in a game that Bumgarner's pitching.
We're going to get to the pitching in this one, that's for sure. Mariners and Angels, 4-run implied total for the Mariners, 2.8 for the Angels. That is the low mark on the slate. Robbie Ray going for Seattle. Patrick Sandoval going for the Angels. I don't even know how to detail this one. This is an Angels lineup that does not have Mike Trout in it. It's an Angels lineup that strikes out more than most teams. And for some strange reason, Robbie Ray is 8,900 today and pulling 56% ownership on a 13-game slate, and every single bit of that is warranted.
Agreed. Like, it's just a mispricing. He's $8,900. He has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate, but he's $1,500 less expensive than the guy with the highest strikeout percentage. He's facing an Angels team that makes Zach Greinke look like he can get strikeouts and makes just horrible pitchers look good. I don't know what to do other than the roster right here. Like if you look at the top pitcher,
I have him projected for 2 points more than anyone else.
Yeah, Alex has 3.5.
Oh my God.
If you look at the top pitchers tool, like, yeah, technically he's under owned or over owned. 56% ownership projection, 28% top 2 percentage, but his top 2 percentage is nearly double every other individual pitcher on the slate. So when you consider that, like, you actually need your pitchers to do well, and it's not just a game of finding pitchers that aren't getting any ownership, I just would be very surprised if I'm not extremely close to 100% Robbie Ray today.
Right. And the other key piece here is being a top 2 pitcher on a 13-game slate is being different than being a top 2 pitcher on a 4-game slate. If he's the 3rd highest scoring pitcher today, he doesn't fit the qualification of being a top 2 pitcher, and he unquestionably is still the correct play when that happens. Like,
right.
3rd in scoring Robbie Ray is a must if he's 56% owned.
Yeah, it's a broken price.
Unquestionable. I don't know. It's just dumb. It's incredibly dumb.
I hope that guy takes my $500 head-to-head that never plays the chalk pitching.
I mean, this might be the most egregious one of all of them.
Yeah, it's certainly up there when you factor in the matchup. Like, we've had those games where, like, Strider was 8,300 or other guys were in that price range, and we were like, yeah, but what if they were facing the Angels? And then now we have it.
Here it is.
What's the strikeout prop, do you know?
I can give you the Prize Picks version. Or you guys can go to oddshopper.com to check it out. 7.5 at Prize Picks.
Seems low.
I have the under, but like,
is that in like 4 innings?
Yeah, it looks good. What are you looking for?
I was just looking at strikeout projections.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, if you're at OddsShopper, just type his name at the top.
No.
Sandoval, 14% owned at 7,500 against the Mariners. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, in that he's a good pitcher, 24% strikeout percentage, 3.77 xFIP. No Julio Rodriguez for the Mariners. He looks good. 7,500 is a really cheap price tag for him. So I understand why he's getting the ownership. I do like him more than Gibson, especially at getting a little bit less ownership. I still think that you can move some of him to some of these other pitchers if you wanted to, but we have him with about an 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Again, I think Gibson is the very obvious one to pivot away from.
I agree.
Cue Kyle Gibson's career high in strikeouts.
No ownership going to the Angels bats. No ownership going to the Mariners bats. If I'm going to get anywhere, it's clearly the Seattle side, but this is not a hitting game.
Yeah, if I was getting anywhere, it would be, $3,900 Suarez or $3,200 Lewis or $4,500 France, but not a good park for hitting. 2 good pitchers. I don't see it.
Close it out. Dodgers and Padres, 4.7 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.8 for the Pods. Tony Gonsolin and Sean Manaea. Neither guy getting any ownership. 9,700 for Gonsolin, 9,400 for Manaea, but it's really hard to want to take a pitcher against either one of these offenses, even if they're good. But I think these guys look, I don't want to say like bad, but I don't want either of them.
It's a really tough sell because, for one, the offenses are very good. And then for 2, these guys are both priced more or less where they should be, even opponent agnostic. Throwing a 97. If you just threw a $9,700 price tag on Gonsolin and a $9,400 price tag on Manaea, every single slate, nobody would really say that they're like wildly overpriced or anything, or underpriced. But on this particular slate, pitchers that have higher strikeout percentages: Cease, Ray, Gray, Cortez, Malley, Lauer, Sandoval. Cease obviously is more expensive. Ray is cheaper. Gray is cheaper. Cortez is more expensive. Malley is cheaper. Lauer is a lot cheaper. Sandoval is even cheaper than Lauer. It's just that then you factor in the opponent. It's basically the Framber Valdez spot where it's just like, he's a good pitcher and he's not getting ownership, or the Cortez spot. Good pitcher and not getting ownership, but I just have no idea how the hell I get there.
Yep. Nobody's really getting to the Dodgers bats or Padres bats either. Decent day to try to bet on raw, exceptional offense. Don't know how much I'm going to get of either of these teams either.
Yeah, I think I can make a better case for getting to the Dodgers or the Padres than I can for getting to Manaea or Gonsolin. Yeah. But still, neither one's a pitcher I really want to target. If you stack the Dodgers, you're basically, and I think the Dodgers are the side that I would get to first. You're kind of just saying, Manaea certainly can give up runs at times, and the Dodgers are clearly a very good offense. Overall this year, Manaea has a 171 expected ISO to righties with a 25% strikeout percentage. You're never wrong going to the Dodgers, but it's also just not a spot that's really going to stand out. To answer King of Smack's question in chat, he said, so are you saying you're staying away from Gibson? I mean, I haven't made lineups. It's noon. But I would expect that I'm playing Gibson. He projects well. He's a good play. My main point, though, is that Gibson's ownership right now compared to the guys around him, whether that's Marquez or Bumgarner or Barrios or Sandoval, is just higher than I think it should be.
This is going to be fun. You ready?
Sure.
Favorite stacks?
I have no idea. Milwaukee, Houston, Yankees. Kansas City. I guess I have to just say Kansas City at every point because I know it's going to happen.
Milwaukee, Houston, Toronto for me. Favorite pitchers?
Ray times 100. Cease if you have the money. Lauer, Sandoval. I like Marquez at 3% in tournaments.
There we go, everybody. Another one in the books. Tough slate. Make sure you're sticking around with us at 4:45. Adam and I will be back breaking this one down again on the deeper dive. Then we'll lead into live before lock. He'll have his tournament plays video out imminently, I guess. So good luck, everybody. Hit the like button on your way out the door. And thank you to Prize Picks for being the sponsor. Peace.